the Kyalami Off-Road Complex for the final heats in round 1 of Super Series 98, with the weather taking a change for the worse. Qualifying heats were run in hot and dusty conditions, but mid-afternoon storm clouds were brewing over Johannesburg and Midrand as the final of the 200 motorcycle class got underway. This time there were no start line hiccups for reigning champion Freddie Fourie on the Elna Kawasaki. Fourie went straight to the front with Ian Topless on the Suzuki and Brett Gray on another Elna Kawasaki tucked in behind Fourie, with the rest of the pack giving chase. In the last of the qualifying heats, Fourie got tangled up at the start and had to work his way from the back of the field. A tremendous ride took him into third place, but the youngster from Pretoria also had a few problems on his hands at the front of the field. Motocross star Topless and Gray were right on Fourie's heels, with Jared De Jager on the Protocom Honda also in a challenging position. Mechanical problems saw De Jager drop out of the last qualifier, and he was also determined to bounce back and come up with a worthwhile result. Behind the first four, there was a bit of traffic jam at the tightest corner on the circuit, with Fourie, Topless, Gray and De Jager threatening to break clear of the rest of the opposition. A few drops of rain were starting to fall as the battle up front continued. Fourie, Topless, Gray and De Jager were line astern up the back straight, and then came Piet Pienaar, Gareth de Rapper and Bruce Robertson on another Elna Kawasaki. Water on the circuit to keep the dust down and the light rain were combining to provide for slippery conditions on sections of the circuit. Other sections were reasonably dry, with freestyle holding off the experienced Topless. Brett Gray, son of road racing legend Rodney, and Jared De Jager swarming all over the back of the Elna Kawasaki. The quartet at the front of the field were gradually easing away from Pienaar, de Rapper and company, and it was a situation of races within a race starting to develop early on. The battle between Freddie Fourie and Brett Gray for the 200 motorcycle championships in Super Series 97 went all the way to the wire, with a pair amongst the hot favourites for the Super Series 98 title. The Elna Kawasaki pair was split by the Topless Elf Suzuki, with Jared De Jager and the Protocom Honda still putting pressure on Gray. Piet Pienaar was still at the front of the second wave of riders, with a terrific battle for 6th and 7th developing between Gareth de Rapper and Bruce Robertson. Up front, Fourie was earning a little breathing space for himself, with a little gap also opening up between Topless and the Gray De Jager scrap. There was a change in race order when Bruce Robertson eased his way past Gareth de Rapper to move into 6th. Robertson now had his sights set on Piet Pienaar on the Russell Campbell Racing Kawasaki, while up front the status quo was unchanged. There were small gaps between race leader Freddie Fourie, Ian Topless, Brett Gray and Jared De Jager, and it looked increasingly as though a mistake or a little fatigue late in the race would be needed to change the order amongst the first four on the racetrack. Race leader Freddie Fourie looked to have everything under control on the Elna Kawasaki, but behind him Topless was making a determined bid to put pressure on the Pretoria rider. Through the long left-hand sweep after the start-finish jump, Topless took a much wider line than Fourie, and the move paid off when the gap between the pair came down to a bike length or two again. Catching the rider ahead and getting past are two different matters, and it was through the tighter sections that the Elna Kawasaki appeared to hold the edge, and Fourie was able to pull away from Topless. Behind the pair, Brett Gray was still holding off Jared De Jager, with Piet Pienaar in 5th place, putting some daylight between himself and Bruce Robertson, who faded a little over the closing laps. The back straight for the final time, with Freddie Fourie on his way to a flag-to-flag win on the Elna Kawasaki. Topless gave Suzuki a 2nd place ahead of the Brett Gray Kawasaki and Jared De Jager on the Protocom Honda. 5th went to Piet Pienaar, with Bruce Robertson, Alex Leonards and Gavin Cowley completing the top 10. For Fourie, it all fell into place in the final.
The track's very nice. It's a bit slippery here and there, especially in the inside corners. The bike's going perfect. The tyres are sticking. My Michelin tyres are doing very good. I'm very happy with them, and yeah, my race was very good. I got the whole shot and just stayed in front.
The final of the Pro Quad category, and it was going to be a wet, muddy and slippery affair for the riders. Rising star Jacques Stubich on the Jojo Tanks Honda and reigning champion Christophe van der Merwe dominated the first qualifying round. The pair immediately went to the front of the field in the final, and once again it was van der Merwe on the Johannesburg Yamaha Banshee who grabbed the whole shot. Behind them, it was every man for himself, with mud and slush from the machines ahead, a major problem for those in the middle of the pack. The best place to be in these conditions was out front, but van der Merwe was already starting to come under pressure from young Stubich, who has an aggressive and spectacular riding style. With a trademark aerial flying the All Black flag from the back of the Honda, Struwweg lost a bet last season under the rugby, it did not take Struwweg long to jump into the lead. He caught and passed Van der Merwe on the tightest section of the circuit, and the big question now is whether or not Van der Merwe could stay with Struwweg and possibly force the younger rider into a costly mistake. After taking a heavy fall in the qualifying event, Brendan Martin had managed to get through the first lap unscathed and had moved into third place. Martin had opened up a slight gap over the rest of the pack, but Struwweg and Van der Merwe were quickly turning this into a two-horse affair. Quad races are difficult enough to master in perfect conditions, but in the mud and slush, they take on a new dimension. The Pro Quads are highly modified vehicles powered by engines over 250 cc's, and in the wet, new levels of skill, concentration and bravery are required. Struwweg, Van der Merwe and Martin had broken away from a pack of riders that included Mark Breckel, Super Quad champion Evan Hutchinson, Sean Rademacher and Butch Eckhout, and the best the second wave of riders could hope for was a mistake from those ahead of them.
With all this spray of mud, they're coming up in your face.
The battle for the minor placings had plenty of potential for turning into a dogfight, with errors of judgment easy to make in the wet conditions. The tight section at the bottom end of the AA Kyalami Light was the driest stretch of the circuit, and it was here that most of the overtaking was going to be done. The battle between Breckel, Hutchinson, Rademacher and Eckhout was starting to close up, with the riders slowly getting to grips with a track surface that provided plenty of contrasts. The riders were beginning to work out the sections where they could push a little harder, but it was still the easiest thing in the world to make a mistake. The large crowd which had braved the weather was getting its money's worth where the racing was concerned, with a terrific battle going on between Evan Hutchinson and Mark Breckel for 4th and 5th. Sean Rademacher in 6th place was manfully sticking to the pair, while at the front of the field there had been a little drama. A mistake saw Christophe van der Merwe on the Johannesburg Yamaha Banshee lose 2nd place to Brendan Martin, and while Struwweg was starting to get in amongst the back markers, Van der Merwe was having to pull out all the stops to try and reel in Martin, with a grandstand finish on the cards. The back straight, Struwweg was still in total command, while Brendan Martin and Christophe van der Merwe were coming up on a back marker. Such was Struwweg's dominance that he even had a little time for showboating on the jump into the start-finish area. Struwweg was obviously thoroughly enjoying himself and was demonstrating just why he's regarded as one of the best young talents to have emerged on the South African off-road racing scene over the last 2 years. Struwweg kept glancing over his shoulder to check on progress behind him. He need not have worried because he was well clear of Van der Merwe and Martin. It was Van der Merwe who was now under pressure, with Martin constantly closing in and looking set to regain 2nd position. The race distance was starting to run out for Martin, but he had closed to within 2 or 3 quad lengths of Van der Merwe. The relentless pressure from Martin brought its reward when he powered past Van der Merwe to move into 2nd place. There wasn't much chance of Martin catching race leader Jacques Struwweg, but Van der Merwe wasn't finished yet and was trying to get back on terms with the Line X Yamaha rider. Coming up to take the last lap forward from race officials, there wasn't much to choose between Van der Merwe and Martin. With his nose out in front again, Martin, out on the latest Yamaha Banshee, had the advantage and was gradually easing away. There was no way Martin was going to catch Jacques Struwweg, who had a 50 or 60 meter lead with less than half a lap to go to the flag. All Struwweg had to do was stroke the Jojo tanks home to an impressive victory, with Martin having to work hard for his 2nd place. A comfortable win for Jacques Struwweg, with a few anxious moments for Christophe van der Merwe on the way to 2nd place. A good ride brought Brendan Martin home in 3rd place, with Mark Breckel holding off Evan Hutchinson, and a big battle for 4th and 5th, and Butch Eckhout got himself 7th spot.
It's mighty but enjoyable, but never again.